Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. The family of Nolan Wells releases their independent autopsy results today at the NAACP convention in Chicago. We'll tell you what was said. Also, Senator Raphael Warnock talks about white supremacy, Trump and the housing bill, as well as what Democrats need to do to reach black voters. We'll also talk with a research firm that talks about how African Americans feel about the issue of voting in the wake of the Louisiana versus Callais decision. We'll talk about the case of a black man shot and killed in Delaware. We'll talk with the family attorney. And also, Texas Governor Greg Abbott had something to say about Texas State Representative James Tallarico not understanding black voters. I'm going to tell you how Greg Abbott ain't got a damn clue about black voters in Texas. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Hey, folks, U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia is one of 4 Democratic United States senators who are African-American in the Senate. There is 1 Republican. And we chatted today about a number of issues, including white supremacy within this Trump administration. We talked about, of course, what Democrats need to do to reach black voters, and also housing bill. Here is our conversation.
Senator Warnock, glad to have you here. I have been doing something really since the inauguration. I've been framing this thing that what we're seeing right now from Trump and MAGA is an effort to completely defund Black America. And I've been saying right now it's a war on Black America. If you look at everything, if you look at the tax on DEI, the pulling of grants, when you look at the federal layoffs, when you look at the FCC, look at all these things. It is as the gerrymandering, civil rights pullback. It is as if there's a massive bullseye on the backs of Black America. And I've been trying to get our people to understand that we cannot sit elections out because they want to completely eradicate the entire civil rights, economic rights, social justice infrastructure that has been not just built over the last 60 years, but even going back to the Reconstruction Amendments.
Oh, absolutely. There is no question that the Trump-Vance administration is a white supremacist regime that is trying to foist its dark and divisive vision of our country onto the American experiment, just as we observe the 250th anniversary of this grand experiment that has certainly has had and does continue to have its imperfections. Black people have been at the center of the work of trying to transform our country, make a country as good as its promise, one that lives up to the ideals in the charter documents in our nation. And there's no question that the Trump administration, whether we're talking about the attacks on DEI, the idea that you would turn diversity, equity, inclusion into cuss words, often at the behest of religious people. I've been saying from pulpits, in my other day job, that equity is in the Bible. The idea of inclusion and diversity, these are moral concepts. And we have to hold this administration accountable, but we also have to hold others, including pastors and churches, who are loud supporters of this, some of the meanest voices in our country right now, the folks most likely to blame immigrants, blame poor people, are people who read from the book. And so I want to challenge them on the basis of the book. I'm a Matthew 25 Christian. And as much as you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it also unto me. And I think we've got to hold them accountable. But come this November, we got to hold them accountable at the polls. People.
But this is also why. It's also why I think where we are, we have to be in this, and I have been just, Bishop William Barber and I, our frat brother, we've been talking about this here. We have to have a micro to macro strategy, but also we have to be walking people through this. Those of us who live and breathe this stuff every day just simply can't assume that people know. There has to be a connecting of the dots. And so you have to connect the dots of Doge layoffs with the dramatic rise in Black unemployment because we over-index in federal government. You have to connect the dots of the attacks against DEI on how every Black nonprofit has been impacted. The slashing of federal grants impacts NGOs. It's impacting Black organizations. And so last year, Biden-Harris, Black-owned businesses got $10 billion in federal contracts, only 2%. That's not down to 1.2%. And so when you lose those billions of dollars in federal contracts, guess what? Those are Black-owned businesses. They have employees. They have families. They have kids in schools. And so this thing is just impacting in all areas. And so we're just in a moment where I just think that people really need to understand that what they are trying to lock in is, and I'm very clear in my book, White Fear. White supremacists rule for the next 50 to 100 years. And folk have got to wake up and realize this is not just about the next election. This is literally about the next half century.
No, absolutely. They are playing, and they've been playing the long game. We on our side have not focused on the state legislatures, for example, the way that they have over the last few decades. And as a result, we're witnessing this rabid gerrymandering that's going on all across our country. The Supreme Court, with its recent Callais decision, has poured fuel on that fire. There are literally some 19 seats that are endangered right now in the Congressional Black Caucus. They want the opposite of the grand covenant e pluribus unum out of many one, and they are trying to shape the nation in their cruel, narrow, racist, bigoted, dystopian image. And the most powerful thing we have right now is our voices. I want those who were saying in 2024, what difference does it make, to look around and see what's happening and ask yourself, can you afford to stay home come November? I think not.
You said that if Democrats gain control of the House and or the Senate, you want investigation of folks who've been redrawing these maps. Donald Trump said in January, hey, y'all got to keep control of this thing because if not, they're going to impeach me. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, said, hey, y'all, we better keep control because y'all need me to protect you. They're scared to death of investigations. And I've heard people say, well, Democrats should not be practicing retribution. I've said, no, wait a minute. Corruption is corruption. And if Democrats gain control, they should be making it perfectly clear that they're going to investigate potential wrongdoing. And clearly we know Donald Trump's DOJ is not going to criminally prosecute. But what is happening, people just can't just get away with it. And not just when it comes to gerrymandering as well, but even just the blatant corruption, the raping and pillaging of the federal budget, with Trump earning billions of dollars, and him and his family as well. I mean, this is mind-boggling what is going on. And so this is also what's on the ballot in November, actual accountability from Congress.
Listen, if when we win one or both of these houses come November, there's no question that we owe it to the American people. We owe it to the people who sent us up here to hold folks accountable. We have to hold accountable those in the administration who are literally looting the government. They are looting and burning our systems of accountability down and selling it for parts. I don't know if Donald Trump was a billionaire or not the first time he ran, There's some question about that.
No, he wasn't.
But,
he wasn't.
But there's no question now. He's wealthier than he's ever been. He's enriching himself. He's enriching his sons, his families. He ran saying that he was going to do something about people's families. And apparently charity begins at home, because he has done an excellent job at enriching his own family. But he's not focused on yours at all. We have to hold him and his enablers accountable. And we have to hold partisan actors in these state legislatures who have been gerrymandering Black people's voices all across the South with absolute abandon. Racial gerrymandering still is illegal. And even the Supreme Court had to nod to that, even in their awful Callais decision. It is illegal to engage in racialized gerrymandering. And so if we win the majority in the Senate, I intend to drag these state legislators before Congress, hold them accountable, get them on the record, ask them about public statements they've made, other evidence that we can gather, so that those who are fighting these issues in court will have the data and the evidence that they need. We can do that if we win one or both houses. And then once we're back in power, there's some real things that we need to do to save our democracy, to strengthen and expand voting rights in our country.
This week, Democrats are meeting to decide who is going to go first. I have made it perfectly clear that I still believe that South Carolina should be the first in the nation. All due respect to Nevada and Latino voters in Iowa and New Hampshire, African Americans are the bedrock of the Democratic Party. But the reason I believe that South Carolina should go first is because the Democratic Party is going to have to come to grips that if you look at the 2030 census, what is projected, blue states are going to lose 12 congressional districts. That's 12 electoral college votes. Those votes are going south. They're going to Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, and other places. And so the Democrats cannot win in the future if they do not win in the South. And that means they are going to have to invest serious dollars on the ground in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, if they want a future. And I think changing it from South Carolina, to me, is a huge mistake. Do you support South Carolina remaining the first in the nation for Democrats?
There's no question that the road to the presidency, the road to the majority, is through the South. And as a child of the South, I absolutely support that. I resonate with what you're saying with respect to my neighboring state of South Carolina. We debate on who has the best peaches, but I support.
Ain't no debate on who got the best barbecue meat bitch in Texas. So let's just be real clear. Y'all can talk about them peaches. Y'all can't talk about barbecue.
But look. Here's the issue we have in the Senate, Roland. Our high watermark right now in terms of seats that Dems can realistically win in the Senate is 52. 52. Think about that. When Barack Obama won election in 2008, he had 60 Democratic senators. 60. That is practically unimaginable right now. We're going to have to expand our base, and a big part of that is the South, which is one of the reasons why one of the races that I've been trying to get people to pay attention to is the race in Mississippi. We can win a Senate seat in Mississippi. I'm not going to kid you and pretend that it would be easy, but it wasn't easy for me to win my seat in Georgia. When folks started talking about...
It's not going to be easy to win that seat, sir. And sorry to interrupt you. When you got two Black candidates and one is running as an independent right now, polling at 6%. I mean, I'm sorry. That you can't beat Cindy Hyde-Smith with two Black candidates running with one as an independent. That's just real.
I think that's a tactical issue that needs to be addressed. But I'm very proud of the race that Scott Callais is running. He actually outraised the incumbent, Cindy Hyde-Smith, in the first quarter. Mississippi is a state where the media markets are relatively cheap, certainly very cheap as compared, say, to Texas. I support wholeheartedly what we're doing in Texas. But if we could get a fraction of those resources in Mississippi, I think it's important both for the short term. I do believe that Scott Cologne can win. Mississippi has just the kind of coalition that we had in Georgia, but even more so. Georgia's 31% African American, Mississippi's 38%. We can build a multiracial coalition in Mississippi to deliver that Senate seat. And in the wake of what they're doing around this partisan gerrymandering, I'd love to see us send Benny Thompson back, of course, to the House, and for good measure, pick up a Senate seat in the meantime.
A couple of more questions. One of them deals with, frankly, money. Are you and other members of the CBC, are you telling the DNC, the DSCC, the DCCC, the Democratic Government Association, Senate Majority PAC, House Majority PAC, listen, y'all got to stop this nonsense of the old way of running. You're going to have to spend 3 to 4 more times in investing in Black people. You're going to spend 3 to 4 more times on the ground because today's Black voter is not the other voter. More Black people are not identifying as Democrat. Doesn't mean that they won't vote Democrat, but the investment has to be there. And I just keep saying to these folks, you can't go to the old model of 40 years ago thinking you're going to pop into a few Black churches, show some Black endorsements, and then do some nominal work. No, you're going to have to spend real money, real time investing to turn out African Americans if they want to win. Are y'all telling them that, and are they listening?
The answer is yes. I'm telling them that. I'm saying it all the time. And guess what? I got street creds to support it. I'm not here by accident. I don't know that nobody who spent more money on Black media, on Black radio, in Black newspapers than I did during my campaign. I had to upset what people would normally do. I had to shake the apple cart to make sure that we were talking full time, in real time, in a robust manner to the most faithful part of the Democratic multiracial coalition. Black people are at the base of the party, especially Black women. And so you move across Georgia and you talk to folks who own Black radio stations in these little rural towns, and you ask them, what did the Warnock campaign do during my 2 races for the Senate? And as a result of that, I'm sitting here twice elected in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, so Black, but they did be listening. What you did in Georgia, and what Don Scott did because Speaker of the House of Virginia, that's really the model of how you turn it out. They better listen. Last question for you. Bipartisan effort, huge numbers passing a housing bill. Housing is a major crisis. The twice impeached criminally convicted commander-in-chief refused to sign the bill because he threw a temper tantrum. That bill is actually helping people. And we know for African Americans, housing is critical. Affordability is critical. Talk about, what you want to see happen now that the bill has become law, despite the antics of the commander-in-chief.
Housing is one of the most important issues we can be talking about. And we have a major housing affordability crisis in this country. Much of it is on the supply side. There's just not enough housing, and a whole range of reasons for that. I've been working on this issue since I came to the Senate, but I'm proud that we were able to pass the Road to Housing bill, which in various ways addresses this affordability crisis. It doesn't do everything, but it is a robust first start. I'd like to do more once we're in power. But in this bill, in this law, this bill which became law, despite Donald Trump's temper tantrum, he wouldn't sign it, but it became law anyway after 10 days. I have a provision in the law that finally addresses the outsized footprint of private equity in the housing markets. And we're particularly seeing this in communities all across Georgia. I think of huge swaths of land in Southwest Atlanta and all across the state that I represent. 1 in 4 single-family homes owned by private corporations in Atlanta. So you're trying to be a first-time home buyer. You're a young couple. You got married. You followed all the rules, and you're starting a family. And when you get ready to buy a house, you're not competing against the person down the street. You're competing against some out-of-state private equity corporation. Well, my provision finally does something about this by putting a cap on how much they could buy and beginning to address this outsized impact of private equity, putting the squeeze on that. I've got another provision, which is the only fair housing provision in the bill, which deals with something, and you know this, Roland, Black homeowners deal with this all the time, appraisal bias. There's a tax you pay just for being Black, trying to sell your house and what people say it's worth. Well, I have a provision in the bill that has now been passed into law. If you get an appraisal and you think there's something untoward there, for the first time, you actually have some legal recourse and you can demand an additional appraisal. These are the things that we were able to do now. There are other things in the bill addressing this whole issue around NIMBY, the government red tape, the zoning laws that make it difficult for us to think outside the box about how to get housing done. All of that is in this bipartisan piece of legislation, and it's going to take some pressure off of the housing market, create more opportunity. But I look forward to the day when we can get even more done.
Well, absolutely. Well, it's a lot of work to do, and I'm telling people they got to be apprised on the issues because, again, if we don't see massive change in November, it's going to be an ugly 27 and 28, and lives are truly on the line.
Public policy is indeed, as you put it, it is a matter of life and death. And there are people right now in our country and even service members abroad who are dead right now because of the outcome of an election. And so your vote is a kind of prayer for the world we desire for ourselves and for our children. And so let's pray our way all the way to and through November with our and our legs, our hands and our feet.
Absolutely. All right, Pratt, I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
As for all the Qs and the Kappas, much love, though. We got pan-Hellenic love. We love everybody.
I call them youth groups. I call those L-I-L, Lil Youth Groups.
You know why you say that? Because you don't need them to vote for you. I need all the pan-Hellenic to vote for me.
You can still call them that because they know it's true. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Everybody.
All right.
All right.
All right, folks, let's bring in my panel. Joining me right now, Rebecca Carruthers, President and CEO, Fair Election Center out of Washington, D.C. Robert Patillo, civil rights attorney, Patillo Law Firm out of Atlanta. Derek Jackson, state representative out of Georgia. Glad to have all three of y'all here. I'll start with you, Rebecca. What Senator Warnock talked about, obviously, those issues. Listen, that's what's going to be on the ballot. These attacks on Black America. Trump don't give a damn about housing. He's about lining his own pockets. But I keep saying what has to happen is, as opposed to folks fixating on marches and rallies right now, and they serve a purpose, we should be having more teach-ins, more training sessions, connecting the dots to get people to understand what the issues are, who's in charge, and how their vote actually makes a difference when it comes to these life-changing, life-altering issues.
You know, the most important thing that the senator talked about is he talked about policy through the lens of life and death. And he's absolutely right. And there are many activists on the ground who are talking about policy in those terms. I know sometimes we talk about Black representation and we talk about, oh, we need Black people. But here's the thing that's also important in this moment. We need people who are in power, who are advocating for Black policies that help push Black communities in this country forward, because it is life and death. If we're talking about housing, the life expectancy of your housed versus unhoused is quite different. When we're talking about a mountain of student loans, the ability to actually feed your family and not be in a 30-year hole because you're trying to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars back because you pursued education in hope for a better life. When we talk about food apartheid, food scarcity, when we talk about these issues, this is life and death. Of course, when we talk about foreign policy, what's happening with the U.S. and its increased aggression in the Middle East, specifically Iran. When we talk about these issues, we do have to understand that stakes are high, and that we're seeing that white supremacists in this country, they're playing for keeps. And so we have to have that same level of intensity as we're discussing policy. And yes, voting is important. Of course, I would say that because I run a national voting rights organization. But voting is one of many steps. But taking the time to examine policy helps people cut through misinformation and disinformation that we see online. The final thought that I would add here is that look out. You're going to see an increase in foreign interference on information on online platforms. It's not just about the midterms, but for many people, we have started the march to 2028.
Robert?
Look, Roland, I think the conversation with Senator Warnock was so important, primarily because I've dealt with a lot more Gen Zs recently. And they are by far the most detached generation politically at their age of anything I can remember in recent memory. I remember when we were all 22 years old, out marching and protesting Bush's reelection, saying we're going to stop the Iraq war, saying that we were going to fight back against the genocide in Darfur, those sorts of things. Who Democrats have to realize, this next generation is not interested in the same politics and policies of the past. You can't just simply roll out of bed and count on them to turn out. You have to present to them policies that they believe in, things that will actually make their lives better, and not just simply say how the other side is terrible. If you are 18 right now, you've been dealing with Donald Trump since you were 10 years old. You've spent the majority of your life with this presidency, and therefore you don't understand what America was like beforehand. Pointing out the absurdity of Trump is no longer a winning strategy. You have to push forward the policies that you actually know will help the American people, and we have to get rid of this old guard that for some reason thinks we can play the same game again and again and again. This is a new post-Obama radicalized young generation that's looking for leadership and is looking for bold and strong solutions, and that's what's going to win going forward, not simply recycling and retreading the same things we've done for the last 40 years.
Derek?
You know, I absolutely agree with my dear friends that I shared a panel with this evening, but I'm going to just take a different kind of pivot. I'm happy that Senator Warnock was able to deliver and actually got this bill passed, right? Because we as Democrats, we often tell every campaign election cycle what we want to do, all the promises that we make, and unfortunately, we don't deliver. This is one that he delivered on. I mean, right here in Georgia, as he already articulated, 1 out of every 4 homes, Roland, owned by someone on Wall Street, and our housing market has went through the roof. And so, as we continue to articulate this quality of life and this American dream, here Senator Warnock was able to deliver, I think, a very hallmark piece of legislation to tell the American public, you do get out and vote, and you vote for someone that align with your interests, we can deliver, and then hold them accountable to get that particular thing done. And so I enjoy the fact that this Housing Act has been done in spite of the person that's in the Oval Office.
All right, folks, I got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about a new research that shows where black voters stand in the wake of the Supreme Court's Louisiana versus Callais decision. We'll also be talking about the results of the Nolan Wells independent family autopsy. All of that right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered, right here on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest.
In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. Brown versus the Board of Education. The history books call it the court decision that ended racial segregation in American schools. But a brand new book, Jim Crow's Pink Slip, uncovers a devastating unintended consequence of that 1954 Supreme Court decision.
We may, if we were lucky, have been the very last generation of Black students to have experienced these generations of Black teachers who have never been replaced.
Dr. Leslie Fenwick joins us to talk about her book and the actions following that landmark decision that dealt a virtual death blow to Black educators. That's next on the Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Swing Cash, Basketball Hall of Famer, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
The Supreme Court's Louisiana versus Callais decision had a devastating impact on black political power. Already, we've seen Republicans wipe out congressional and state seats, and they plan to do more after the midterm elections. Well, where do black voters stand on this? How are they responding? How do they feel? And is this going to be a significant turnout effort in November? Joining us right now is Terrence Woodbury to share with us some research that he has been developing. He is the president and founding partner of HIT Strategies. Glad to have him join us to talk about this here. So, Terrence, take us through this new data that you now have.
Thank you so much for having me, Roland. You know, we have long known that when people are upset, when they're pissed off, when they feel attacked, that these resistance movements that they result in can win elections, just like we saw in 2020, where the Black Lives Matter movement mobilized young people across America, delivering Democrats to victory. In 2022, we saw the same thing with the abortion rights movement, with the young people again being mobilized to protect abortion rights in the wake of the Dobbs decision, which prevented the red wave. And now in 2025, when we started watching these resistance movements, whether it was the No Kings movement or the Ice Out movement, HIT Strategies began to observe that the complexion of these movements were changing and the age of these movements were changing. They were just a little bit older and a little bit whiter. And so we started to want to observe what's going on with Black folks. We started the Black Ops Coalition, anchored by a bunch of Black civil rights and voter engagement organizations. And what we found is that, number one, Black folks are engaging in this resistance movement. We're engaging very differently. Number two is that since the Callais decision that gutted the Voting Rights Act and began to systematically oppress Black votes and Black power across the South, that Black folks see what's happening, that they are more engaged in what's happening. In fact, 65% of Black folks say that the attacks on voting rights across the South have made them more likely to vote. And we've seen activation, engagement, that Black people are taking actions now. In fact, 75% of Black voters say they've taken at least 3 actions to combat voter suppression. And that's up from 62% of Black people that have been activated this time last year. And so, look, we've long said this, Roland. If Republicans are going to try to oppress Black votes, they better keep doing it privately in smoky chambers behind closed doors, because once Black folks find out about it, we respond in kind. And so we have seen this across the South. We know the South are not red states. They've just been oppressed states. And now what we're seeing in places like Georgia and in South Carolina, where that oppression is front and center, where state legislatures have attempted to gut, 2 Black congressional seats in Georgia, and the resistance movement stopped them. In South Carolina, they tried to snatch Representative Clyburn's seat, and the resistance movement stopped them. And more importantly, Roland, what we're seeing is that in these Democratic primaries that have happened after the Callais decision in places like Georgia and South Carolina, that Black voters are surging. And so we recognize that our power is being attacked now, and we're taking actions to protect it, and not waiting until election day to protect that power, but taking action right now.
When I think about generations, when I think about what the numbers look like, I've often said this on this show. I really started watching this 36 years ago. 1990, was a junior at Texas A&M University. And I was listening to the conversations of African Americans. So I'm born November 14th, 68. My brother's born November 13th, 1967. He's a year ahead of me. So that generation, so he goes to Texas A&M in 1986. I go in 1987. So we go to college. 18, 19 years. This is how people don't understand the math. King gets killed in 68. So we literally were that first generation that was born and went to college after the death of MLK. So I'm listening to conversations, and what I'm looking at and realizing is that that generation is coming out of school, first job actually making more money than many of our parents. And so I'm listening to terms of what they're paying attention to. And that's when I first started really saying, hey, y'all, we better be mindful of this generational gap that we're seeing. So we go from baby boomers to Gen X. Then we go from Gen X to millennials. Then we go from millennials to Gen Z. And behind Gen Z is Gen Alpha. So your research pointed this out. You said that Black Gen Z, go to my iPad, are less likely than boomers to, this is what the research showed, Black Gen Z are less likely than boomers to fight for freedom and racial justice. But Black Gen Z are much less likely to fight for American democracy or the right to vote. 56% of Black Gen Z believe that they do not have to defend democracy because it does not work for us, compared to just 22% of Black boomers. Younger Black voters are almost twice as likely to expect political violence, 44%, than older Black voters. Now, what jumps out is that when you and I talked, I guess it was 2022, the election, when you were talking, we were talking about, you were saying how we have to use language differently. So go back to my iPad. So when I see that Gen Z are much less likely to fight for democracy or the right to vote, that means that when I think about Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign, what was the centerpiece of the campaign? Fight for democracy. What do you keep hearing people talk about? Fight for democracy, or we got to fight for our right to vote. So the language that is being used actually is not appealing to the folk we need to turn out.
That's exactly right, Roland. Look, it's not that, and we've been saying this since 2022, that Democrats have to stop defending democracy. Stop defending democracy. That is not a winning message. That does not mean that we abandon democracy. But young people, specifically Gen Z millennials, who have seen multiple candidates get the most votes and still lose, who have seen an insurrection, who have seen candidates refuse to accept the outcome of elections. These young people have had mixed results from democracy, and they are not prepared to defend that. And so what we found is that while 81% of Black boomers say it is Black baby boomers say it's important for them to defend democracy, only 50% of Black Gen Z say it's important to defend democracy.
So what that means is, when we're talking about messaging, you have to, if you're taking Black people, you have to have Black boomer messaging, Black Gen X messaging, Black millennial messaging, Black Gen Z messaging. And the problem with these white strategists is that they just want to do one message to Black people. That's it. And the candidates as well. And what I keep saying is, like, no, you have to have a micro targeting strategy. And this also goes for Black politicians and Black groups. We have to be talking to different generations in a different way.
That's exactly right. I mean, we've heard a lot about the gender gap in the Black community, Roland, how Black men show up different than Black women, when in fact the gender gap exists across every racial group. In every group, women vote different than men. Women show up more than men. And in the Black community, that gender gap is smaller than it is in any other group. But what is undermining our ability to coalesce this resistance, to really demonstrate the full force of Black power, is not the gender gap between Black men and Black women. It is the generation gap between older Black voters and younger Black voters, where across every single metric, whether it is, how important is it to fight for democracy, how likely are you to vote, how much do you approve of Donald Trump, on every metric, younger Black voters are 20 points away from older Black voters. And so this is where we have to start solving for the gap. And a part of how we do that is by connecting the dots between the democracy, these kind of pain points of democracy, and how they are impacting young people, Black young voters, economically. For example, right, we may want to talk about ICE occupying our cities or being deployed into American cities. And that's fine, as long as we are connecting that to the fact that means that there's $75 billion of wasteful spending that could have been used to solve problems in your community. We can talk about an unconstitutional war in Iran. That's fine. But it's more important to talk about the fact that we're spending $1 billion a day in Iran, almost $30 billion wasted, and what Democrats would have solved with that money. Because this is, I mean, it comes down to how is this impacting me personally? And all of these decisions, all of these attacks on democracy, on voting rights, they have economic implications. And we have to connect the dots and show how these decisions are, yes, they're undermining America's democracy, but also they are hurting you, your family, and your community.
This right here jumped out at me, and I found this to be really interesting. Now, first of all, this is the actual, just the graph here, but I'm going to go down here. And when you talk about that black-female divide, again, we have to deal with messaging. So it says, hurt you personally, not made a difference personally, help you personally. Men under 50, Trump's policies, hurt you personally, 39%. Not made a difference, 40%. Help you personally, 18%. Now we go women under 50, stark contrast. Hurt you personally, 62%. Not made a difference personally, 24%. Help you personally, 9%. Let's go to men plus 50. Hurt you personally, 69%. So it jumps from 39 to 69 when you go from men under 50 to men plus 50. Not made a difference goes from 40 to 22. Help you personally drops 18 to 8. Now, with same thing, if we're talking about messaging and how do you talk, so now if you're talking to black men, the conversation to black men 50 plus is different than the ones below that because, again, when you look at numbers, who are the folks that have been getting laid off? Largely African Americans who are 50 plus, men and women, federal workers, others, impacts of DEI. And so again, what it is saying is that when we're talking about how do we communicate, we have to be, I'm thinking about, I forgot the guy's last name, but he's the author about your love language. I mean, that's what this is all about. And all this is saying is you cannot continue with this sort of one size fits all. That worked from let's just be honest, that worked from 68 to 2004. Obama comes along, he completely changes all of it. He's an anomaly, so you got to really take him out of 8 and 12, and you got to look at the elections since then. And so the messaging has to be different.
That's exactly right, Roland. And what makes that quite easy is the internet. What makes it easy to target specific voters with a specific message is the internet and the fact that they're consuming all the information from the palm of their hand where they could be targeted. I mean, think about what we're talking about. We're talking about segmenting black men and black women as rudimentary as, a rudimentary division as that when it was a decade ago that Cambridge Analytica was using data to target vote, to isolate Brexit messaging per person, not per demo or per group, but per person isolation. This is what we are combating. We're combating the other side, Republicans, who are targeting young men with messaging, who are isolating and frankly, showing them messaging that none of us are really seeing or hearing because it's only in the palm of their hand. And we are still trying to blanket message as if we were only advertising on television, as opposed to using the power of targeting on the internet. Young men, when I look at the graph that you just put up, 18% of black men under 50 saying that Donald Trump's policies have helped them personally. Guess how many black men under the age of 50 voted for Donald Trump? 18%.
And that 18% helped me personally. Y'all, it's just right here in the data. Women under 50, 9. Men plus 50, 8. Women 50 plus, 2. Defenders, 8%. Activists, 7%. Spectators, 11%. So that's the highest percentage out of all of those groups.
And look, Roland, keep that up for a second, because I just want to draw this correlation. I'm going to get in the weeds a little bit here with correlations. But when you just look at that bottom row, Black men under 50, 18% say that Donald Trump's policies have helped them personally. 18% voted for Donald Trump. Black men over 50, only 8% said that Donald Trump's policies to date have helped them personally. 8% of Black men under 50 voted for Donald Trump. Look at Black women over 50. Only 2% say that Trump's policies in his second term have helped them. Only 2% of Black women voted for Donald Trump. I mean, it's a direct correlation. We have to now demonstrate how the actions of this federal government are hurting these Black men personally. and the Black Ops research demonstrates how we do that.
Last question for me, then I'm gonna go to my panel. As a part of this, when you were doing this, did you ask folk where they're getting their information from, which also speaks to how we should be communicating with them?
Yes, so we dive a lot into where they're getting information, but also we dive into who the trusted messengers are, who they need to hear from. And there's a couple of things happening here. Number one, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama remain the most trusted messengers in the Black community. That ain't gonna change no time soon. But what's most important is who comes right after them. And that is people like me and people like you, right? They want to hear from their peers. In this age of kind of, this splintered communications ecosystem where everyone is hearing a different message, everyone is reading a different message. There it is there, Barack Obama, 51% of Black voters say that he's the most trusted messenger. But right after Barack Obama are people like them. Their most trusted messenger are their friends, their family, their peers, and notably, and here's where we start getting into the media strategy, the influencers that they have chosen to follow and trust. Those are their trusted messengers. Those are the people like them. And so we have an opportunity, and all of these are twice as high as Black celebrities, as Black athletes, as Jay-Z, Beyonce, all the folks, Cardi B, Meg Thee Stallion, all the folks that we're going to throw on stage over the next 90 days, when the people that they trust, and we should do that, I want to be clear, celebrities break through the noise and get people's attention that are otherwise checked out of politics. But when it comes to changing what they believe, when it comes to making those 18% of young Black men who say that Trump's policies have helped them, when it comes to changing those perceptions, they need to hear from their peers. They need to hear from other young Black men. And a part of how we do that is by hiring, enlisting the influencers. And I want to be clear, hiring them with money, because that is what the right is doing. They are finding the points of the centers of gravity on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, and they are paying them to deliver this black pill of annihilation that nothing is going to get better. No one has your back. You might as well withdraw. Just get money. Black women have done enough. You're part of the 92%. That is the bullshit that is being fed and targeted to these young voters. And we can only counter that with other influencers that they have already chosen to trust. It's the equivalent, Roland, of what we used to call feeding the streets, putting money on the streets in street teams. When we used to meet Black men where they are, we were meeting them in barbershops. Well, now meeting them where they are is in the palm of their hand. And the messengers that they trust, they already follow.
Oh, yeah, listen,
I mean, those messengers.
Listen, my friend, Brother Todd Brown, hit me today, and he said his son came home and he was like, yo, he said, man, why y'all didn't tell me about Roland Martin? Because his barber leaves the show on the moment he opens. Because we have this show. We also have a 24-hour channel on YouTube that you can just put on and circulates. And he was talking about that. I've got other. So the point is, what I keep saying is, you have to produce the content that makes it available to them, and so they're touching it in their own way. And so my whole deal is, you have to be using it to be talking to them, reaching them, speaking to their issues. We're going to be dropping, I was going to have it ready, but we're changing our promos, a new show we're launching that's specifically targeting black men. But the whole point is you have to have different messaging that resonates with them. So whether it's black men, black women, black men 50 plus, under, 18, 35, is all that way. And, you know, and like I had somebody, and they were like, well, you know, man, you need to have, brother told me, he's like, well, you need to have this on your show, reach the younger people. And I actually said, no, you need to have a separate show that does that. And again, he wasn't understanding what I was trying to say. I said, you can't do everything for everybody. I understand our core audience with this show is 45 plus. That's our core audience. So we created the Other Side of Change, hosted by two millennials, specifically for that. Again, folk have to understand that today's media is totally different than I normally think about it. Quickly, let me go to the panelists. Robert, your question for Terrence.
Terrence, I think it's a really important conversation because often we have this generational divide between before it was boomers and Gen Z, and then it was Generation X and Generation Alpha, etc. What do you think has to happen in order to create the type of messaging that will be broad-based enough to get all these disparate groups on the same page? You know, we're trying to get people who listen to both Patti LaBelle and the City Girls to vote for the same people. What has to happen to get that messaging out there?
Never gonna go on the same page.
If I take it a step back, people, and this is something I've continued to advise Democrats, is that when people are experiencing pain, frankly, when their lives seem to suck, they need a reason for that pain. And it can't just be because I ain't doing something right. I got the degree, I went to school, I did all the things you told me to do, and this shit still sucks. And those people need a pain, and young black men are experiencing a separation and isolation, struggling to enter into this workforce and to find their footing. And these are young black men that got degrees, saddled with debt, and still can't get a footing. Those young black men need a reason for that pain. And what Donald Trump does is comes along and tells them that the reason for your pain, he says the same thing to young black men, the same thing to white rural men, that the reason for your pain is because of those other people that are getting what you deserve. Those immigrants, those Muslims, those trans kids. And I think that Democrats, frankly, I don't know what reason we have given these young black men for why they're experiencing this kind of pain. Besides, the only reason I could think of in the last 10 years is Donald Trump. And they're just not buying that. They were experiencing this pain before Trump. In fact, we beat Trump, somebody else became president, and it still sucked. And now he's back and it still sucks. At least, you know, to the message that he's presenting, he is trying to get rid of the people that are causing that problem. I would argue that one message that I know cuts across this generational divide, in fact, it cuts across every race and every gender, is that the reason that your life sucks is not because of the people that have less than you. It's because of the people that have way too damn much, that are willing to take from you and from them, so that they can have even more, the people that are rigging the system against you. That is a message that resonates with 73% of America.
Yep.
Not 73% of Black America. 73% of Americans believe that corporations and billionaires are rigging the system against us. And so Democrats have an opportunity to own that message, and then to really begin to hold these corporations accountable for the way special interests are rigging the system.
Derek.
Terrence, great to see you again. Listen, my question is around the primary versus the general election. When I look at the primaries, the turnout is so extremely low. I mean, I know we continue to talk about they're coming to take your voting rights and voter suppression and all that. And here in Georgia, we were talking about record-breaking this and that and the other based on last year. Well, our turnout, Terrence, was only 28%. 72% stayed home. And so when you have 2.5 million Black voters right here in Georgia, what can we do to cut through this low voter turnout? And I get the messaging piece, but it seems like there's something else. It's not just restrictive that we continue to pass in Georgia. It's not just talking about democracy or they come in and take your voting rights. We got to be able to cut through this low voter turnout. And then the last thing but not least, I would love to see your data around name ID, because we seem to hang our hats on name ID. Because I guarantee you, if you asked back in 2007, will you believe in Barack Obama, the answer would not be 51% like it is today.
That's right. That's right. You're spot on. You are spot on. So, Georgia is priority number one for me in 2026. In fact, I have moved to Atlanta to help a black woman and a black woman become governor and a young millennial get reelected to the U.S. Senate. And I do think that those two, one of the things that we have seen is that candidate selection matters. And when you have candidates that represent the broad diversity of the coalition, that speak to the lived experience of people, and that can tell you why your life sucks, because I am experiencing it too, because my children are experiencing it too, because my siblings are experiencing it too. That is a very, very different proposition than what they've been experiencing. And so I do think that's going to be important in Georgia. I would also argue that, this is investment. It's going to take resources, and we've done this analysis cycle over cycle, where turnout in battleground states where $100 million is being spent is double digit, 10, 20 points higher than it is in states where we're not investing. And so Georgia is going to be a very high investment state. But then the last thing I would say is we are seeing that Black approval rating of Donald Trump has plummeted back down to 5 or 6%. It was as high as 20 to 25% at the beginning of this second term. But the problem is that as his approval rating has plummeted, as they become anti-Trump, they have not become pro-Democrat. And so this is why I encourage Democrats, especially in places like Georgia, where a lot of money is about to be spent, to give voters something to vote for and not just something to vote against. They know Republicans suck. They know Donald Trump is terrible. They know MAGA is attacking them. They need to know what Democrats are going to do for them.
Rebecca.
Hey, Terrence, it's good to see you. I owe you a phone call.
Yes, you do.
So, and I'll be in Georgia next week. So I'm reading Ella Baker's biography, especially as she's talking about participatory democracy.
Is that the Barbara
and
Ransby book?
challenging Black hierarchy.
The Barbara Ransby book? Okay, go ahead.
Yep. Especially as she's challenging Black hierarchy. I'm raising this because when I look at influencers online on behalf of the party or on behalf of candidates, when I look at celebrities, when I look at Black churches, Black fraternities and sororities, that has been the way in which the Black establishment has said, okay, this is how we're going to organize the Black community. It's not working. So how do we get the Black entrenched establishment to understand that we have to get everyday Black people involved into this thing if we're actually going to do something to move our communities forward?
Luckily, frankly, I don't know how we convince the Democratic establishment to do things differently without replacing more of them, frankly. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. But that is why it is so important for organizations like yours, for grassroots organizations across the country, Block Wisconsin and Detroit Action and Power Pennsylvania and Top Texas Organizing, that all of these groups that have become a center of gravity in our community, that they are funded, that they are well resourced, because they are doing a lot of the work that state parties used to do. And so, as the national party, I believe is kind of in a soul search for the brand of the party that I don't know will be answered until 2028. That we just have to make sure that the groups that are on the ground, that have demonstrated a proof of progress, that have been on campuses the way you have, organizing and mobilizing and registering young people, that those groups are actually well funded, because that's where the work is happening.
All right, Terrence, where can people go to check out all of the research?
Yeah, please check out the Black Ops Project. We've been conducting this research for the past year. Focus groups, polls, top lines, all the focus group clips can be found at www.hitstrat.com /Black Ops. And please, I really encourage you to listen to some of these focus group clips. Listen to the pain in these black voters, and instead of us talking about these black voters.
Well, what we'll do is we'll also we'll pull some of that so we can actually share this so people can actually see it and understand it. Terrence, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, brother.
Folks, quick break. We come back. We're going to talk about a critical case out of Delaware. Black man shot and killed. Family demanding answers. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Support the work that we do. Join our Bring It Funk fan club. You want to contribute via Cash App. Use a Stripe QR code. You see it right here. Text the money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo RM Unfiltered. Zelle Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Back in a moment. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281.
Melanie Campbell, National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and Black Women's Roundtable. And we are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered all day, every day, 24/7. Spread the word.
The family of Kadir Skinner is calling for criminal charges against a police officer who shot and killed the black 19-year-old in Wilmington, Delaware. Wilmington police have previously said that around 11 p.m. on June 24th, Skinner came out of his home and waved a gun at a crowd, prompting officers to open fire. However, Skinner's family insists that he was running away from a loose dog. Many are calling for justice on behalf of Skinner, including black clergy leaders. During a virtual news conference on Tuesday, Bishop William Barber demanded transparency and fairness in this senseless killing of another young black man.
This is not just an isolated incident. Number two, we must call for even members of the police community that know things to come forward. This is not a time for the police to be in solidarity with wrong. If you know wrong was done, then you need to step up along with these men and women of God of all faith. Number three, this is about humanity. Wow, this is a 19-year-old black man. Anybody, black boy, teenager, baby to most of us, anybody that's not concerned about somebody being shot in the back has lost some of your humanity. And then finally, as Pastor Bland will say, on August 24th, we're having a mass community rally. You say, well, why is it the 24th? Why not immediately? Because we're going to make it strong and big and powerful to show that this community is not going to be on fire and be concerned for 2 days or 3 days or 1 week and then back away. That's not who you're dealing with in these brothers and sisters. That's not who you're dealing with in Pastor Bland. It's not who you're dealing with Attorney Daniels and others. This is you have to stick and stay, because Kadir at 19, not 20, not 21, at 19, he wasn't robbed in a bank, but he was shot in the back. He wasn't resisting arrest, but he was shot in the back. He wasn't committing a crime, but he was shot in the back. He wasn't beating somebody down, he was shot in the back. He was shot in the back and killed, and did not die immediately, and then died over time, died without getting the treatment that maybe could have saved his life. What we believe at this point is an unnecessary, unprovoked, immoral a shooting of a 19-year-old, keep saying it, in the back. And Pastor Bland told me that piece troubles the whole nation, Pastor Bland. When every time we tell other people, they say, well, what? He was shot in the back at 19 and then laid and then died later. So Pastor Bland, we know that we're standing in solidarity. There are people all over. There has to be justice. There has to be truth. There has to be transparency.
Folks, joining us right now is Harriet Daniels, the attorney for the family. Harriet, glad to have you here. Now, the Women Police Department, they released body camera footage from 3 officers showing 3 different perspectives of what took place. The first video is apparently from the officer who actually shot Kadir. Y'all can actually roll that. Walk us through your perspective in terms of what you and the family are saying with what happened here.
Thanks for having me, Roland. On the night of the incident, two officers in a patrol vehicle, and they was, I guess, patrolling the area. We don't know exactly what was their purpose for their presence in that neighborhood. But at some point, they saw Kadir running. The police patrol vehicle stopped. Both officers exited the vehicle and started to give chase to Kadir. In the video, at the beginning of the video, if you slow it down, you can see Kadir running from a dog. In fact, we have witnesses' statements that, in fact, corroborated the video before we even saw the video, that he was walking down the street, turned the corner, and a vicious dog got loose, and he took off running. And simultaneously, these cops pulled up and kind of did a roll stop. At some point, while Kadir is running, the officer pulls a firearm and fired 3 shots, striking Kadir in the back. What we do know is that he was shot in the back and he was running from the police. We have our witnesses to that account, that not just the video alone, but corroborates what's on the video and corroborates the physical evidence here. The Williams Police Department initially came out and said that Kadir came out of the house, pointed a gun at a crowd of people. That prompted the officer to give chase. And if you can see in the video there, you can kind of see the dog running. You can see the dog running behind him. That's not true. The second video shows a better vantage point of what's down the street and the direction where Kadir's running from, and that clearly showed that he was not in any way and form coming out of the house, pointing a weapon at a dog, anything in capacity. A gun was recovered away from his body. That gun was handled, picked up, but as we stated before.
Looks like we lost Harriet there. We'll hope to get him back to further explain. Folks, there are other angles. Here's a third angle from the third officer who arrived on the scene. Just go ahead and roll that. And so again, there have been 3 different videos that have been released showing, roll the video please. There are 3 different videos that have been released, different angles of what took place on that night. And again, what you are hearing from this family is that they want justice. Unfortunately, we have seen far too many of these cases, Robert, where, let's just be clear, benefit of the doubt often goes to the police officer, and then when they put out there there's a gun on the scene, people just automatically go, "Yep, there you go, he's guilty, move on."
Well, this is one of the most important things that came out of President Obama's 21st century policing policy, which is the proliferation that we've now seen of both body cam footage, but also the general public understanding that when you see an encounter of this nature, start filming immediately. We can go back 40 years to Rodney King, and people understand the importance of video in these situations. I was with Reverend Jackson at the Ahmaud Arbery hearing when the lawyer said, well, we don't want to have Jesse Jackson here on Monday. I was the person in charge to make sure Reverend Jackson was here on Monday to walk into court. And talking to the jurors in those cases, it was the video that was dispositive, because at the end of the day, law enforcement still has this benefit of the doubt, this still belief. There's still many people, particularly white people in this country, that believe law enforcement is there to protect and serve. They believe their word above anything else, unless you have photo and videographic evidence to disprove that. So until we can somehow create some kind of technology where every black boy has a drone that follows them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to film them, we have to start working societally to break down this presumption of innocence and presumption of truth on the part of law enforcement. There's a reason police reports are not admissible in court. They're fundamentally unreliable. They cannot be trusted on their own without corroborating evidence, and this is why it's so crucial that we get jurors, that we get a court system that believes people the first time without having to have a surveillance satellite overhead to prove what we're saying is true.
We've got Harry Daniels back. Harry, you about to making a point that before we got cut off?
Yeah, so at no point was Kadir a threat to anyone or the officer. He was clearly running. We have screenshotted, slowed this video down. The experts looked at it, and you can clearly see at the time this officer discharged his firearm, he's shooting Kadir in the back. Roland, one thing that stood out to us is the narrative, and I think my good friend Robert Patella was talking about that, is the police report and the narrative that was given initially that Kadir came out of the house with a gun and pointed a gun at a crowd. Well, that's simply not true. That's simply not the case. It didn't happen. And that account came from the shooting officer of what he said transpired. Here's the thing. It's our position that he didn't have reasonable suspicion of probable cause to even give chase to Kadir. The Supreme Court of the United States have made it very clear: right to walk away, you have the right to run away. In this case, Kadir was not running from the police. He was running from a dog that in that neighborhood, when we canvassed that neighborhood and spoke to witnesses, there's a big sign on the window say, "Beware of dog." That dog to be beware of showed itself, and he got away from his owner, and Kadir took flight and took off running. Roland, we don't believe Kadir even knew the officer was behind him. So, we got this thing riding while black, swimming while black, shopping while black. Now you got running from a dog while black can be subjecting you to being shot in the back. I don't want to sound cliches, but it is what it is. The evidence, the autopsy, the evidence shows that he was running and shot in the back, as Bishop Barber stated. And this case have garnered a lot of attention, national attention. The people of Wilmington, Delaware are protesting daily. We was able to get this video released. The Attorney General released these videos, and it shows exactly what these witnesses have already stated. This is, I mean, we talked about these things being epidemics, but you see it over and over again in cases that myself and my colleague Benjamin Crump and Chance Lynch, that we represent people across this nation, and you have these egregious acts by law enforcement thinking that they can just shoot a black man simply because he's running. And that's not the case. So we stand with his family, the clergy, the national clergy, stand with his family and pursue this case until we get a result for this family.
All right, then, Harry Daniels, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Roland. Take care.
Folks, today in Chicago, the NAACP convention, civil rights attorney Ben Crump joined the family of Nolan Wells, where they laid out their findings of an independent autopsy that was done on the body of the 18-year-old here in Washington, D.C.
As in the case with Nolan Wells, at the time of this report, this forensic pathologist does not know the condition of Nolan Wells. He did not know whether he was conscious or unconscious when he entered the water. He said that would be significant. He said he did not know whether he was forced into the water or unforced into the water. He said that would be significant. So he said the condition of Nolan Wells before he entered the water would be the crux of the matter. It would be of utmost importance to being able to determine a cause and manner of death. He said, definitive circumstances of death are required to determine the manner of death. For these reasons, this pathologist cannot rule out, and let me really call your attention to this. For these reasons, this pathologist cannot rule out if any intervening non-accidental factors contributed to or caused the death of Nolan Wells. Very open. He says, however, dissection of the back of the head during the layered posterior neck dissection revealed a 12 by 8 inch focal area of red discoloration in the deep soft tissues overlaying the occipital bone. And he talked about how he found red discoloration when he cut open into the back of his head towards the occipital bone, and he saw the red discoloration, and we actually saw the pictures of it. It's significant. You can't help but notice, why is this dark red here in the back of his head? And so he was important to note that in his report. He said that etiology of this finding is unclear. There are no lacerations of the overlaying skin nor fractures of the underlying skull. These findings are inconclusive for perimortem injury due to both the extensive decomposition and the absence of associated injuries. This finding, however, is significant enough to be highlighted in this preliminary report for further investigation. It is important to reiterate that the finding could not have been observed in the first autopsy because the posterior head and neck dissection were not performed. He said another limitation, move this back here. Another limitation faced by this forensic pathologist was the absence of the anterior internal neck structures. The trachea and the laryngeal cartilage, the thyroid horn, and the hyoid bone were not received with the body. So he's saying that the throat was not received with the body when he got Nolan Wells' body in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. And so let's discuss that with what he said about that. He said, it is assumed that the initial pathologist retained these structures for additional evaluation. He said the retention of the anterior neck structures during an initial autopsy is a common forensic pathology practice. He was chief medical examiner for 7 years in Washington, D.C., and he said that if they had concern about throat or any fracture or compression of the throat, they too will hold them back. He doesn't know why they held the throat back, but he said the throat was not with the body of Nolan Wells when he received it in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. He said, nevertheless, a posterior neck dissection performed without review of the anterior neck structures is incomplete. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death. He said he would need to have the medical examiner in Mississippi allow him to review the throat. That's why he said his autopsy is undetermined pending investigation. Remember, it's about transparency.
So, folks, so it was very interesting looking at some of the comments from people trying to understand what took place as to why they went to Chicago. Let me help some people out. Nolan Wells was killed in killed in Mississippi. The NAACP National Convention is in Chicago. Emmett Till is from Chicago, was killed in Mississippi. So, again, if you understand the history of the NAACP, they've long been involved in cases like this. So I don't understand why people, and I am totally befuddled about the sheer stupidity of people on threads and Twitter who are complaining about Ben Crump. Oh, we don't like how he talks. He doesn't win cases. It's like they have no idea what the hell happens in these cases. And we reached out to Dr. Mitchell to join us on the show, but he declined because it's an ongoing investigation. And again, we've been covering this. And Robert, again, it's a lot of conversation. People have a lot of conversation, but it is an ongoing investigation. And so what we are continuing to see is trying to get answers as to what the hell happened.
And I think that's what's most important in this case, these questions. I spoke with the family of Kendra Johnson recently, who had very similar circumstance of a young black man who ends up dead, and mysteriously nobody knows anything about what has happened to anybody. Everyone gets real quiet. You're dealing with small town politics, small town law enforcement, small town judges, etc. And the families often end up never getting justice or never getting a satisfactory answer. And this is what is so significant right now about not having an operational Department of Justice. There's one thing to see what they're doing with the Epstein files, what they're doing with other investigations, but not having an operational division of civil rights in the Justice Department is perhaps the most tragic part of what's going on with this extreme MAGA agenda, because we normally would have a federal backstop where if local jurisdictions were intransigent, if local officials were recalcitrant, you would have the Department of Justice and the FBI that could step in, as you saw with Cheney and Swerner and Grutter in the 1960s. Now this is going to be very much on the family and on outside organizations to donate, to not only determine what happened with this autopsy, but find out what happened in that crucial first 48 hours to determine how exactly did the messages get deleted off his phone. What pictures or videos are still out there on some cloud or some cell phone that might be dispositive? Where exactly this young boy's throat at? And how is that missing from the body? There are more questions are being raised by the day, and the compulsion of local jurisdictions to simply try to sweep these things under the rug. We've seen time and time again that once you start shining light on this, once you start bringing national attention, you get answers. And the fact that we don't have a Department of Justice or FBI right now that can help us means that we have to depend on ourselves to fight this fight.
Rebecca.
So, I want to shout out Dr. Roger Mitchell. He is the only Black male chief medical examiner in the country. I'm going to say that again. He is the only Black male chief medical examiner in the country. And because of his scientific knowledge and because of his medical training, he has really pushed the envelope for civil rights and for making sure that Black and brown families, especially Black families, receive answers. That is the very reason why Nolan's body came here to DC, because this is where Dr. Roger Mitchell resides. And I think it's important to say that, because this is another reason why we need more Black people going into that particular profession. I've sat on panels with him where he's gone through the criminal legal system, and he's talked about deaths while people were incarcerated. And oftentimes he went into those prisons and he was able to conduct many of those autopsies to show that there's been systemic issues, especially towards Black people, Black men who are incarcerated and who die in custody. But that said, yes, Robert's right. There's so many questions that are left, even the question about the throat. I heard a medical doctor speak on it earlier, saying that sometimes if you're still doing an investigation, then certain body parts might not go to the second or third or to the subsequent medical examiner examining the body. However, Dr. Roger Mitchell did this examination, I think at least 10 days ago, And we've seen that this autopsy has been released. Mississippi has had it longer. So even if they were keeping the throat longer to continue to pursue additional investigation, why haven't that information been made public? Why hasn't that throat then been shipped to DC for Dr. Mitchell to complete his examination of the body? There's too many questions. And we know, and I know there are different, like I'm an attorney. I know there's many attorneys who are reluctant to provide a conclusion on this, and that's responsible. But I will say this, having my family been in this country for centuries and seeing things like this happen over and over, the ancestors are speaking here. And I don't think that it was just a simple accident in the way in which the initial reports, or within an hour, the sheriff's department saying, oh, there's no foul play found. How can you say that when the body is still barely cold, when there hasn't been public findings from the original autopsy?
Derek?
Yeah, I'm going to pick up where Rebecca left off. I mean, it was problematic for me as a father of 7, 4 daughters and 3 sons, to hear a sheriff to say there's no foul play here. How is there no foul play? Because if the roles were reversed, Roland, if there was 3 young black men and 1 white boy, 4 went over and 3 came back. Their cell phones would have been confiscated. They would have been interrogated for hours on end. It would have been a thorough investigation from beginning to end. And so this has been problematic from the time the sheriff said there's no foul play. And I get all the other players, the parents of the other 3 boys, they're very strong and political in nature. But what about Nolan Wells' family? I'm going to keep coming back to that. We continue to watch this 2-tier justice system from 1619 to 2026. How many times do we need to say, Roland, enough is enough? And that's the part that from Kadir Skinner, Eric Gardner, Breonna Taylor, the list continues. These families demand justice. And when you continue to have more questions than answers, we're going to get the response that we currently have.
Indeed, indeed. Plus, we're going to continue to cover this story, giving you the latest. And again, I need people to understand, there's a lot of conversation around this. We don't have much information. We don't have much information. So our objective is to give you real, credible information. So whatever's the latest, what's new, we'll actually have that for you. Got to go to a break. We come back. Texas Governor Greg Abbott chastises Texas Representative James Tallarico, saying he has policies that don't help black folks, black Texans. Ever looked in the mirror, Greg Abbott? That's next. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281.
This week on The Other Side of Change.
Black life, Black death, in a country that was never built for us.
We are talking about 18-year-old Nolan Wells, his family's search for answers, and the way that our own trauma is showing up in how we are reacting to the news.
Where was Nolan in the 90 minutes between when you're claiming you last saw him and when you actually left the island? Because 90 minutes is a lot of time. So where was he?
Tune in on The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
What's up? It's the MCEO Talib Kweli. You are checking out Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, on Sunday and Monday, Texas State Representative James Tallarico, the Democratic candidate for the United States Senate, held forums in Houston and Dallas speaking to black voters. We streamed the event in Dallas on Monday's show. He, of course, is running against the corrupt Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. And obviously, black voters are key. Texas has more eligible black voters in the state than any state in the country. Well, Texas Governor Greg Abbott decides to go on Fox News and weigh in on this very issue in terms of Tallarico and black voters.
Do you believe the radicalism of Tallarico is getting out there? Has it entered the consciousness of most voters in Texas?
Not adequately. The fact of the matter is Tallarico has been on a tour across the state of Texas, lying to Texans about who he is and what his record is. The fact of the matter is, if you just look at the votes that he has cast in the Texas legislature, he is either the or a second most liberal, leftist, progressive in the Texas legislature, advocating all those ideas that you just mentioned there in your comments. The fact is also, you saw him be asked that question about cross-dressing by African Americans. The fact of the matter is, his beliefs about transgender ideology are contrary to where the vast majority of the black community is in Texas and probably across the entire country. Tallarico has a problem with the black community that goes back to the time when there was the divide between Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett. But also that divide is fundamental ideological because the black community doesn't support these transgender ideas. The black community is heavily connected to faith and religion, and they are against all of his ideas about sanctuary city policies and welcoming people from coming across the border illegally. They say, what about our community? We've been here all along. Why are you giving free things away to these people crossing the border illegally?
Wow, I didn't realize that Greg Abbott cares so much about black people. That's interesting because considering black people in Texas despise Greg Abbott and his policies. Now, he referenced the question being asked about transgender at the town hall. It wasn't black voters that asked the question. It was a black woman that asked the question who happens to be a Republican. Yeah, she actually was outed later on as to who she is. And so again, here he is running his mouth on this. Well, Congressman Christian Menifee of Houston decided to weigh in on this. And this is what he said on Twitter. He said, Congressman out of Texas here, running down Greg Abbott's rap sheet with black Texans, for those who aren't familiar, signed a mail ballot law that got black voters rejected at far higher rates than white voters, pushed a voter ID law struck down as racially discriminatory by one of the most conservative appeals courts in the country, redrew our congressional map and eliminated a black district in Houston, also a black district in Dallas, ended race-conscious hiring at state agencies and universities, appointed the guy who killed the state's minority-owned business certification program, refuses to expand Medicaid, leaving over 1 million low-income Texans, mostly black and Hispanic, without health insurance, bans schools from teaching about institutional racism, pardoned a bigot who murdered a black activist but wouldn't give George Floyd a posthumous pardon even after his own parole board recommended it, left Texas 18, a historically black district, without a voice in Congress for nearly a year, sued by the NAACP over voting restrictions again and again. Greg Abbott, that's your record. You don't get to speak for black Texans. We all know you couldn't care less about us, and you actively harm our communities. Sit this one out. Joining me right now is Isaiah Martin, a political commentator, content creator. Glad to have you here. Let me also remind people that the Biden administration the Department of HUD was set to sue Texas because they actually held back $1 billion from Harris County and said that hurt low-income communities. Isaiah, you're there in Houston. You ran for Congress. I'm born and raised in Houston. Greg Abbott, who also was pissed off with a black mayor in Houston and Sylvester Turner, a Hispanic woman county judge, Lena Hidalgo. And so they purposely targeted Harris County, withheld resources, and those sort of different things. So Greg Abbott don't give a damn about black Texans.
Absolutely not. And I just think that it's absolutely hilarious for him to position himself as any type of authority on this issue whatsoever, because everywhere I go, black Texans and just Texans in general, whenever I visit Houston, say that they're sick of these price increases as a result of the tariffs that Trump has put on everything. They're sick of the fact that we're fighting a dumb war because Trump went and got us into it. Now, ultimately, Greg Abbott has his hand in all of these things because he's supported candidates that are rubber stamps on all of these policies and has been absolutely a disaster. So, look, I think that Texans across of all sides of the spectrum see that Greg Abbott is certainly not one to be able to comment on any of that stuff because he's supported people that have made this economy worse, and he himself is pushing policies that makes this economy a lot worse for everybody.
Greg Abbott also supported a corrupt attorney general who his own Republicans wanted to impeach.
That's right. I mean, you know how bad you got to be to get impeached by your own party in Texas? I mean, Texas has some of the most extreme Republicans known to man, and if they are trying to impeach someone like Ken Paxton, I think that speaks a lot about what kind of person he is.
Talk about what Tellerico has to do. First of all, a poll came out showing that he's performing better among African Americans than Beto O'Rourke was at this time, then Congressman, and then Congressman Colin Allred. And so as anybody who understands when you run, especially statewide, there's a build up to how you begin to reach out. He announced he's going to be investing some $25 million in African-American turnout in different ways. And so how would you assess thus far this black outreach?
You know, look, I think that he has done, he's working to expand his coalition. When I talk to my friends, I think that they sound very clear that they don't want to put someone on in the Senate that's going to rubber stamp another Clarence Thomas getting on the court. I mean, that's really, I think, a top of mind issue. So, look, I think that Tellerico has got to go out there and reach people from all sides of the state. But I think the ultimate reality here is that black voters time and time again have understood the threats that Republicans have put up. And I think they're going to make that same determination again. I think Tellerico has got to get into more black churches. I think he's got to be able to go and reach people that don't go to church as well. But also, I just think that the message is one of the principal focuses of being in the United States Senate is appointing people to the Supreme Court. If someone like Ken Paxton gets in there, he will put another Clarence Thomas on the court. And what does that mean? More rollbacks of the protections that have prevented a lot of the cancer, the pollution inside of our neighborhoods. It's going to result in someone who's going to rubber stamp in all these tariffs that goes forward. That is a principal focus. And I know that Tellerico will vote against any of these judges that someone like Trump puts up there moving forward.
Well, what's also more hilarious, here's Abbott talking about where Tellerico is in black Texans, and Ken Paxton, his entire agenda has been putting a bullseye on black people. Ken Paxton has not been a friend to black Texans, and if he's in the United States Senate, he damn sure is not going to support civil rights. He's not going to support expansion of opportunities for black businesses. And we can go down the line on things that he will not be supporting at all.
That's right. I mean, 100%, whether it's supporting language and contracts that help Black businesses go and get additional contracts. You know, that's a really big focus of legislators, particularly in Congress, to go create these grant programs that are available for people. So ultimately, Ken Paxton will be no friend to the Black community. I think that people understand that very clearly, but it's just making sure that message gets communicated to people. But, you know, the other thing is that I think it's important to, yes, call out the things that Ken Paxton that we are against that Ken Paxton supports, but also talk about the things that Tallarico can do for us. Tallarico will be a vote to go and expand the Affordable Care Act, which is going to reduce prices for us folks at home, because we already know that health insurance premiums are up by more than 26% this year. We know that Tallarico will be a vote against these ridiculous tariffs that are raising costs at the grocery store for business owners and everything else. That's something that is going to go and save people money directly. So I think it's important to talk about, yes, why we don't like Ken Paxton, but voting for Tallarico is also going to put more money in your pocket by supporting policies that's going to do that for affordability.
And just in case folks don't realize this, the Texas Public Opinion Research Poll came out, and Gina Hinojosa, who's running against Greg Abbott for governor, there's a 57-point difference between her and Abbott among African Americans. So Greg Abbott, you have a Black problem.
Yeah, he 100% does. And he always has. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you know, the belief that anybody would go listen to Greg Abbott on Fox News and say that, wow, you know, this is a guy who's a champion for Black voters, it's just absurd. You know, it's just the audacity of this guy. But like I said, I know that Black voters see through this stuff. And I think that ultimately going out there, communicating an affirmative vision for what people will get with someone like Tallarico in the Senate and Gina Hinojosa in the governor's mansion, I think is going to be really important moving forward.
One of the things that I have tried to also make clear to people is that, and listen, the primary was in March. There are a lot of folks who supported Congressman Jasmine Crockett. And look, I voted for her. I got no problem actually saying it. She was my member of Congress. I'm still registered in the 30th Congressional District in Texas. But the reality is she lost. She lost. The primary is over. You have a general election. And so now the question is, who's a Democratic candidate, who's a Republican candidate, and which of those people are going to be in the best interest of Black voters? To me, it ain't even a conversation between Tallarico and Paxton. Like, ain't even a conversation. I mean, Paxton can't even figure out what house he votes from, but he wants to talk about voter fraud. But the thing, and so what has been offensive to me is listening to people who ain't even from Texas, okay, including Black folks, weighing in and essentially telling Black folks, yeah, we good if Paxton wins, we ain't supporting Tallarico. And I'm like, first of all, who the fuck is we? Here's what I know. My 79-year-old daddy and my mama, who'll be 79 in November, living in Texas. My brother, his wife, 2 kids, still in Texas. My sister, her husband, and her 4 kids, still in Texas. My sister and her husband and her 2 kids, still in Texas. Of my 13 nieces and nephews, 12 of them are still in Texas. So I need people who are not from Texas to frankly shut the fuck up when talking about these races, because it is you can bring in Gaza, you can bring in Israel, you can bring in financial, you can foreign aid, you can bring what's happening in Iran, you can bring in all these things, but as a 57-year-old native Texan, I see what the hell is going on in my home state, and damn Ken Paxton being my next United States Senator.
I know that's right. I mean, I think that ultimately, like you said, the primary is over. It is never going to change. So the reality is that the choice is between Ken Paxton and James Tallarico. And so, look, you know, you got a lot of people from all parts of the country that want to opine or whatever. But until you've gone and you've met that person that lives inside of Trinity Gardens that is faced with cancer clusters as a result of Republican policies and deregulation that's allowed these companies to go and pollute our air and drinking water and everything else, until someone's actually met someone like that, I don't think they really should be really opining. And the reality is, putting someone like Ken Paxton is going to endanger the lives of everybody that lives in Texas. It's really just that simple. And I'll tell you what, putting another Clarence Thomas on the court for literally 40 more years is going to be quite literally the most disastrous thing that anybody could have ever imagined. So look, it's a binary choice. You've got between James Tallarico or Ken Paxton. I think that the person that's going to be a vote against tariffs, a vote against the next Clarence Thomas, a vote to make sure that we can expand the Affordable Care Act to go and make sure that health care is given to everybody, a vote to make sure that we protect Social Security and expand it instead of trying to constantly take it away. That is exponentially better than someone who's going to vote to send trillions of more tax dollars to the richest people on earth, vote to go and send us into more war that's going to cost the American taxpayer more and more money, and someone who's absolutely going to go forward and continue the rampage against Black-owned businesses, American businesses in general. I think that's a no-brainer, and we cannot allow for folks that are paid agitators to try to go and mess that point up. You know, I think that even if you look even further, during the presidential election, we understood that the choice was between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Look at the effects of what that's done. A vote for sitting on the sidelines has resulted in more price raises, that's resulted in a destruction of the American economy, and has absolutely pushed our allies further and further away. That choice is now upon Texas voters. You cannot allow for disagreements in a primary to change whether or not you're going to vote for someone who agrees with you on 95% of the issues. James Tallarico is the obvious choice to me to go to the United States Senate, and I think that Texans have to go and vote accordingly in November.
Go to my pound. Derek, you first.
Yeah, listen, Isaiah, I certainly agree with you and my dear brother. But my question is this, right? Because Texas could be very pivotal when you think about Tallarico winning, and that one Senate seat can influence and impact the entire United States. What can we do in the other southern states? Because we have our fight over here in Georgia trying to get Ossoff to reelected. What can we do to collaborate between Texas, Georgia, Louisiana, Gary Chambers doing his thing? I think there's strength if we collaborate along these 11 southern states.
Yeah, you know, I absolutely agree with that. I think that, you know, they've got, John Ossoff has been a great senator in Georgia. You know, Jamie Davis is running for the United States Senate in Louisiana. I think that there has to be support there. And I think there also has to be support for Tallarico. I think there has to be a slate, because we have to understand that all three of these candidates have something in common. They are against the tariffs that are raising prices for Americans. They are against what's being done to get rid of the ACA subsidies that's making you at home pay more for things. So understanding that if you like Ossoff, well, you're also going to like Jamie Davis. You're also going to like James Tallarico, because they support policies that's going to put more money in your pocket. I think we have to communicate that to folks far and wide.
Rebecca.
Hey, Isaiah, I hear your analysis, but I don't think it addresses some of the data and some of the focus groups that Terrence Woodbury has been producing over the last couple of years. For people who do plan to vote, looking at the choice between Tallarico versus Paxton, okay, cool, right? I understand that. But there are people who have done all the right things. They showed up to vote, their life hasn't gotten better. They went to school, they got a bunch of debt, they vote, and it's still hard making ends meet. There are people who are literally dealing with life and death issues right now, people who are trying to figure out where their next meal is going to come from. And so even though, yes, I lead a national voting organization, I understand voting is a privilege. It's a privilege when you're going into the ballot box, that's what you're thinking about, versus there are people who are dealing with major life issues and voting doesn't make their top 10. So for those people, what is the messaging for those people for why they should still participate in a system that hasn't been delivering for them?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that without voting, we never would have gotten the Affordable Care Act across the finish line. And I know about a time in which people were kicked off of their health insurance if they had a pre-existing condition. At one point, pregnancy was considered a pre-existing condition. So many people were not able to get health care, but because people organized and because people voted, President Obama was able to get into office and to push that across the finish line. That is a direct change that happened as a result of that. So many Black-owned businesses can tell you about a time in which they could not get as much direct investment from the federal government. Records amount of federal funding flowed to the pockets of Black-owned businesses as a result of the policies enacted by President Biden and the previous administration. So look, I think that ultimately what we have to talk about is what people get in return for their vote, because I do believe that voting is transactional. I think that an understanding and a recognition that the status quo is not working is very important. But then talk about what comes next. I personally believe that the agenda should be universal health care for every single person in this country, universal child care for every single person in this country, going forward and getting rid of these universal broad-based tariffs. Those are three things that can go and reduce prices for Americans. And I believe that the Democratic Party runs on those things. Those are things that can absolutely be accomplished. So look, to make things in summary, people want to understand that they get something for their vote. When you voted for Barack Obama, you got the Affordable Care Act, and that was great. If you voted for Zohran Mamdani, you got a child care system in which it is free for a lot of New Yorkers in New York. You're seeing building of so many homes across New York City. That's what people want to see, I think, delivering something that's real and tangible that they can feel. And in a lot of ways, I think that hasn't been something that we have done as much. We run on sometimes on these amorphous things that are big ticket, issues. Let's run on real tangible things: universal health care, universal child care, getting rid of broad-based tariffs. Those three things directly can go and reduce prices for Americans. And I think we need to get that done.
Robert?
Could you talk just briefly about how voters can avoid some of this COINTELPRO and fake information that comes out? We saw this from Governor Abbott. We saw this from Donald Trump in the last election, asking whether or not Kamala was Black. Now we have Abbott asking whether or not Tellerico supports Black people. None of the people actually have any interest in helping Black people. They just want to drive these divisions within our communities and within our side of the aisle. Can you talk a little bit about what people can do to start avoiding them, particularly when they're coming from, the online Brother Mustafa 68 who just appeared out of nowhere to talk about how Tellerico doesn't like Black people, and then it starts metastasizing through the algorithm that Elon Musk owns and starts spreading this, which we saw in the last election cycle, really can impact elections.
Well, I think the biggest thing is we got to understand that everything we say can be cannon fodder for these Republicans. And so, for one, some of these folks are content creators, and they're trying to get engagement and clicks off of asking people questions. Like I saw somebody making a question to Tellerico about what some other content creator said and how that made them feel. At the end of the day, we have to understand everything we say will be used by Republicans. And so we cannot feed into that. And I don't think that is very helpful to do that. I think that ultimately my ask to the voters of this country is to go and ask yourself the question, who's going to do something for you personally? And so I think that person is Tellerico, who will vote for healthcare, who will vote for childcare, who will vote to make sure that we can bring down costs. I think that's really important. And then you juxtapose that with someone like Paxton in this instance. What's he going to do for you? Well, I don't think more tariffs is going to make your life better. I don't think that getting rid of more subsidies for ACA is going to make your life better. I don't think someone who's going to support rolling back environmental regulations to put more pollution in your air and water is going to make things better. I don't think that's in your best interest. Ask yourself the question of who's going to be in your best interest. And when you look at the policies that Tellerico supports, that absolutely is it without real question, in my opinion.
Question I have for you, it actually piggybacks on what Rebecca said. I have been yelling and screaming this for the longest, that what should be happening right now. When she talked about, hey, how can I make somebody's life better? Look, Tellerico is running his campaign. He's doing his thing. But that doesn't mean that we can't do what we're supposed to do. And for me, I've said what should be happening right now is in every city in Texas, every week there should be a We the People discussion, panel, discussion, town hall, Q&A, walking people through all of these different things. They should be live streamed. We should be kicking those things out, primarily because a lot of people just simply don't know what is happening. They don't understand. They're not connecting the dots. And I think the mistake is when we have events and rallies and we say, need you to vote. Well, I can't get you to vote unless you're registered. And I can't get you registered until I walk you through why you need to be registered, why you need to vote. And so that, to me, is what really should be happening as well. And so it should be multiple events. Churches and community groups should be doing this, teaching people, having teach-ins and real discussions that are connecting those dots. Your thoughts on that?
I think you're 100% right. I just saw a friend of mine, State Representative Jolanda Jones, just did a really big town hall in Houston, in which she did. She invited a lot of people to go forward and learn about what's going on and what's happening. I think that there has to be a variety of different events. I don't think that everything will be able to be done by just Tallarico. It's going to have to be done by other political figures. And also, with our own individual selves. Talk to your friends and family about the importance of voting and why it is. If you do see someone repost something that is disinformation that is not true, go and talk to those people and debunk that. This is going to have to be a team effort, because at the end of the day, we all share the understanding that the Republicans cannot win. Now, if we disagree with some of the ways that Tallarico might be campaigning or whatever, take matters into your own hands. Say, what do I need to go do to go and correct the record and to go and spread the words to people? I know that I am doing everything I possibly can, even though I don't live in Texas anymore, to go and spread the word to my friends that, are still living in Texas about why it's important to go vote. And the particular things that they're going to be getting as a result of voting for Tallarico. So we've all got to pick up our mantle. I remember my late mentor, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, once said that no one is coming to save us. We are the ones that are the cavalry. And so we have to pick up that mantle ourselves and go and do everything in our can to go forward and spread the word to as many people as possible.
You talked about folks. So what? You left Texas? Where you go?
I live in the DMV now.
Oh, yo ass. See, you need to live in the DMV and keep your voter registration in Texas. See, that's allowed. That's allowed.
You never know.
Well, I've been doing it. What'd you say, Rebecca?
I said, check your local rules, consult an attorney, because in Texas, they are bringing felony charges to people outside of Paxton if you are voting at an address in which that is not your domicile. So
right.
Make sure you check local law.
When you got a homestead and
sure.
paying them, when you got a homestead and you paying them property taxes on your home and it's in your name, that's your house.
That's right.
Yeah. So I know my house is because I own it and I pay them damn property taxes. Absolutely.
That's right.
Every year. All right, Azia, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Folks, we talked about organizing. Go to my iPad. This Saturday in Houston, Freedom Summer 2.0. They're going to be in Houston this Saturday. You see it right here. July 24th, 25th. They're in Austin, August 21st and 22nd. Dallas, September 18th and 19th. Got various performances. But also, if you want to learn more information, this is the QR code right here. And so again, right there, Houston needs y'all to show up. Freedom Summer 2.0, great training, things that'll be going on this Saturday in H-Town. All right, y'all. New York City, Zohran Mamdani made it clear that he wanted to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but the reality is he can't do that. This thing called diplomatic immunity. And Donald Trump he can't do it. But that didn't stop him from dropping this video.
Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal, the architect of a horrific genocide against the Palestinian people. He is responsible for the killing of more than 73,000 people, for the maiming of tens of thousands of children, as those who survive undergo amputation without anesthesia, for the targeting of neonatal hospitals and maternity care centers, denying newborns even the chance to live, for the countless people he starved as he blocked food and humanitarian aid from reaching them, for the gunning down of hundreds of aid workers and journalists. And just last month, the UN confirmed that Palestinian children continue to be deliberately targeted and killed by Israeli armed forces, more than 8 months after the so-called ceasefire. The list goes on and on, all as we, as Americans, pay for the bombs that do the killing. There is a reason the International Criminal Court issued a warrant for his arrest. As human beings, we have spent generations building a shared understanding that there are crimes so grave they offend all of humanity. Anyone, with their eyes, with their heart, with their conscience, should recognize the devastation he has wrought and understand that he belongs before a court of law. As I've said, I agree with the ICC that Benjamin Netanyahu should be arrested and tried for his crimes, as I do for anyone else charged by the ICC. My administration has reviewed every avenue available under applicable law to determine whether New York City could execute the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant if Benjamin Netanyahu came here. It is clear that we do not have the independent legal authority to enforce this warrant. The federal government, however, does, and I call on them to join the ICC and execute this warrant. And I want to be equally clear. Benjamin Netanyahu is not welcome in New York City, nor is any other war criminal at large. While we cannot end the genocide on our own, we can decide whether our silence will become another weapon, and we can examine every tool we have to defend the humanity and dignity of all people. That is my commitment to you.
You know, it's always quite interesting, Rebecca, United States, we want to execute the rule of law. We will actually go into Venezuela and kidnap its president and drag him back here out of his country to execute an indictment in this country. But then we don't care about the ICC when they rule against us or our friends.
Well, it sounds like the United States is committed to exercising and protecting the white supremacist rule of law here. Because here's the bottom line. We know Netanyahu is a war criminal. We know what's happening in Israel, in Gaza, is genocide. That is clear. That's what history is going to show. That is what the present is showing, and it's very clear now. You know what? I think in the previous segment, I talked about how do you convince people to vote, even if voting is on their top 10 things to do. Being a moral leader, the way we see the mayor of New York being at this moment, is a reason to support him. It's a reason why people who may not be actively involved in our political system say, hey, you know what, that's a leader. That's somebody who's actually trying to do the right thing. That's someone who's actually trying to make people's lives better. And then we see the policy that he's doing. He's doing a lot of pro-Black policy, a lot of policy that doesn't just help Black communities, but it helps all communities. Because we know when you do pro-Black policies as a matter of public policy, it actually helps everybody. And so that is the future. If we want to get Gen Z, if we want to get Gen Alpha, that's what it looks like. It is unfortunate that there are members of his own party who don't support him, but that is the future. That's the reason why you see certain candidates like looking at the Senate race in Michigan. It's the reason why you're seeing people gravitate towards those types of candidates, those types of leaders, and they want them to be their elected leader because they're showing moral clarity in this moment, and they're not doing this equivocation. They're not playing politics, but instead they're actually trying to deliver for people.
And what also I think jumps out here, Robert, is that Mamdani is not buckling from the pressure. His whole deal is, oh, y'all mad? Suck it.
Well, you know, I find it interesting that this is even an argument because we talk a lot about madmen around the world and people that we have to do regime change. I'm just asking a very just simple question. Who has been responsible for more loss of human life in the last 40 years?
United States.
Benjamin Netanyahu or, let's say, Maduro? Benjamin Netanyahu or, Gaddafi? Benjamin Netanyahu? You can go down the list. If you just go number by number, he has been perhaps one of the top 5 or 10 people that has led in the deaths of human beings over the course of his time in power over the last 40 years. So on this issue of whether or not he should be tried as a war criminal and be arrested in the United States of America, I find it ridiculous that we have quote unquote Christian conservatives who talk about the sanctity of life all the time, who talk about the importance of godly principles, being the ones lining up to support someone who has killed more women and children and civilians than perhaps anyone in the modern era. What Mamdani is doing should not be a hero's journey. This should be the baseline for what we do in America. Because if you can't stand up to Benjamin Netanyahu, how can we expect you to stand up to Vladimir Putin? How can we expect you to stand up to Kim Jong-un or to Xi Jinping? How exactly can we expect you to do anything outside of your enlightened self-interest if you won't stand with the Netanyahu?
Derek?
You know, the timing of this video is perfect, Roland. I mean, you think about it. I mean, all of his candidates that he endorsed up in New York, they all won. Those other candidates in other primaries across the United States, over in Colorado, that's following him, they won. I mean, the young lady, she was 29 years of age. She beat someone that's been in Congress for 30 years, right? These are the kind of leaders that we're looking for right now. The mayor is very clear. He's saying at a time when over 100 Democrats voted to support a bill to give Israel more money. Meanwhile, we need our children, 644,000 of our children in Georgia need SNAP benefits. We have those veterans that are looking for care. And so Mamdani is saying we no longer want the status quo. We're challenging the Democratic establishment. We're saying that although I know I can't do this, as he articulated in his video, he said, I'm gonna put this video out there so that way you all who should be doing something in Washington, D.C., y'all should be doing this. And that's gonna force that 18 to 35-year-old group more pressure to the 435, especially Democrats up in Washington, D.C.
Folks, and remember, and don't forget, you can tune in tomorrow where Mayor Mamdani will be right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, that is it for us today. Let me thank my panel. I appreciate it. Rebecca, Robert, and Derek, thanks for joining us so much. All right, folks, that is it for us. If you want to support the work that we do me a favor. Actually, before we go, just here, Harriet Tubman Museum, go to my iPad. I did get an update. We are $2,433 away from hitting the $75,000 goal because of what we've already raised. They've already called the contractor to come repair the door, and they work on the murals, put the security system in, and so we're $2,433 away. Y'all have been absolutely fantastic, and so let's cross the finish line, and so hopefully when we come back on the show tomorrow, we will have hit $75,000. Folks, we want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. Our goal is to have 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each a year. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. That supports this show, plus all the new shows that we have. Tomorrow, I'm going to be announcing a new show that we'll be launching in the first week of August. If you want to support us via Cash App, use a Stripe QR code. You see it right here on the screen. Also, that's for credit cards as well. Checks and money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. PayPal's R. Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Samsung Smart TV, and Roku. Also, of course, if you want to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered swag, go to shopblackstarnetwork.com, shopblackstarnetwork.com. You can also get our America at 250 shirts. We got some fantastic shirts. We're actually making a design change, but this is just one of them right here. You're utilizing the quote here of Bob Moses right here. We're not here to bring politics to our morality, but to bring morality to our politics. And so we've got other shirts, Harry Belafonte, Paul Robeson, and others. And so we want you to be sure to check that out. ShopBlackStarNetwork.com. Also support our Black-owned products that are available right here on our marketplace. Every product that you see right here, these are Black-owned companies. When you support those companies, when you buy from ShopBlackStarNetwork.com, you also support the work that we do. And so please do all you can to support the companies that we work with. And again, fantastic products. And we certainly just appreciate all that they do. Be sure to download the app Fan Base. Follow me at Roland S. Martin. And also, shout out Norfolk State. I'm rocking their shirt today on the show. So shout out to all the Spartans. Y'all, that's it. I'm going to see y'all tomorrow right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla!